Welcome back to another Shots from the Winchester podcast presented by Greencastle. Today we have a very special guest, Joe Crandall, the CEO of Greencastle, or the HMFIC. Look that abbreviation up. Joe, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, we're in the Winchester. We usually start with a shot. So what is this mystery liquid we're doing a shot of?
Well, so this was a gift from Alan Van Son before he went off to go jump out of airplanes. And I have no idea what's in it, so we will just go with
this. Okay. All right. Cheers to Greencastle. I'm not sure what that was.
It's whiskey of some sort.
Yeah. Everybody wants to know all about you, so we're going to dive in here.
All right.
So let's start with your military background. Tell us, when you got started, when you went in, and then, if you want to hit some high points.
Sure. I actually enlisted when I was 17. I needed my parents' permission, and I signed up for 8 years initially in the Navy, not realizing that it was a true 8 years. I figured the Navy wouldn't count, but they did. And after I went in as an electronics technician. After a few years of doing that, I decided I wanted to try something a little bit bigger and bolder, and applied to ROTC in the Naval Academy. Got denied by both. However, the Naval Academy gave me an appointment to the prep school. So I went to the prep school for about 10 months. And if you pass there, thankfully, you get to go to the Naval Academy, and that's what happened. And after a couple years there, I decided I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And tried out and made it, and did the Navy SEAL thing for about 7 years.
And not just the Navy SEAL thing. You got through BUDS on the first try, right?
Yeah, that was one of my goals, was to get through BUDS on the first try, not really knowing a lot about it and what it would take. I actually showed up to BUDS pretty out of shape, so I was concerned with whether or not I would actually make it in the first try. But you find out how to get through it using more mental tricks than anything else.
So what was the most challenging part of BUDS?
The hardest part was the mental blocks that you create for yourself. Everybody thinks that Hell Week is like the pinnacle of BUDS, and it's usually, I think for us it was the third week or fourth week of training. And for anybody that doesn't know, Hell Week is you wake up Sunday morning and you don't sleep until Friday afternoon. Depending upon how well your boat crew does, you might get some sleep in there, but our boat crew, we never got any sleep. So it was a long period without sleep, and you think that's the pinnacle of the training. But once you get through that, you find out that there's pool comp and all these other things that go on that are just as physically straining, but more mentally challenging, because you're starting to add in a lot more of the water component.
I've heard that a lot, that it's the mental component that's the worst part of that. And that's a lot of the schools in the military.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of trying to outlast everybody and the program. So,
Yep.
So what made you, well, let me back up. After you went through BUDS, how long were you a SEAL?
I did it until about 2003. So including the training time, about 7 years.
Okay. And then what made you call it quits then?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, because most of my time was before 9/11. So it was, as a SEAL, you were only operational for a few years as a lieutenant, and then you went to sit behind a desk as the OPSO or other desk jobs. And so I'd kind of already put it in my mind that was it, that I was going to probably get out after my platoon commander tour. And then while we were deployed overseas in Okinawa, 9/11 happened. And that changed the whole paradigm of how SEALs did things. And now, as a SEAL officer, you could deploy much later in your career than you could ever before. And so I was like, all right, this is going to be good. And then I had been injured in a parachute accident a few years earlier, as well as during the last few months of the deployment, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And those two things kind of just put a nail in that coffin of doing anything beyond that.
So what went through your head then when you were diagnosed with colon cancer? That's young. You're 30.
Yeah.
Like, what was going through your head when that happened?
Yeah, it was probably the same kind of mentality that got me through BUDS, and what I have now is it was more of like, all right, what do I got to do? And when I got initially diagnosed, nobody really, you really didn't know what to do, because I was 30. I was the youngest that at least the people in the Navy that I was talking to had seen in a long time, and So it was more of, hey, just deal with it, get through it, and I didn't really let it bog me down because of all the other things that I'd been through in my life. This was just another challenge. And I had what I called cancer light, which was once I had surgery, I didn't have to have chemo or radiation, but I had to have abdominal surgery that took out about a foot of my intestines and sewed me back up and said, go.
So what was the recovery like then? I mean, if they're taking out a foot of your intestine, I can't imagine you're just like, next day walking around.
You'd be surprised. No, a couple, 3 days in the hospital, I think a week. And then, but I asked them, I was like, should my diet change? Should I eat anything different? They're like, no, do whatever you want. So I did that. And then about 3-4 months later, I had to have one of my ankles reconstructed because I got an injury in a parachute jump. So they had to essentially reconstruct the left ankle, and then they did the right ankle about 3 months after that. So that whole 2003 period, I was in and out of Bethesda Hospital recovering at the Pentagon.
So then had you made peace with, like, you were going to kind of be done with being a SEAL, being in the military?
Yeah. It was tough, but I didn't want to be a liability with bad ankles. Everything that I was doing, I was limited in what I could do. I mean, climbing up rope ladders, my ankles were popping out of socket, and when we would do combat dives, with swimming, scuba diving, my ankles were popping out of socket. It was just, I wasn't fully there, mm-hmm. And so I was being a liability to the team if I had continued. Mm-hmm. So, getting out was a typical transition. I didn't plan it very well. I actually ended up selling drugs in North Philly for a while, legal drugs.
Oh, okay.
So I sold, So I sold Viagra and Norvasc and Lipitor in North Philly. And if you guys don't know, North Philly is not a very nice neighborhood. It's a place that, even as a former Navy SEAL, by the time it got dark, I was out of there. One time, I showed up at a doctor's office, and it had just been shot up by a gang. So,
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So it was a bad neighborhood, but so I was selling drugs in North Philly.
Okay.
I just like to say that.
Yeah. So then after that period, I'm looking to hear about how you made it to Greencastle. Like, how did you find out about this place?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I went from Pfizer, who, by the way, has the greatest sales training program, which was what kind of set my career off. And then I went from there, and a buddy of mine from the Navy had been working at a company called Get Well Network, and they were looking for some sales guys, and they were a startup. And they had just hired this new sales manager, and he loved everything about my resume except for the except for the Pfizer part. So he's like pointing at my resume. He's like, "Joe, I love everything except for this." So I just went like this. I went, "Okay, don't worry about that." And he liked that, And so he hired me, and I ended up selling software systems to hospitals for a few years. And when I was doing that, hold on. I'm getting a little thirsty.
If the listeners can't see this, he's just, I'm assuming that's not Woodford.
Good. Save a little for later. So I was selling software systems, and burns a little bit. And I just
Woodford?
Yes, of course it is. And so I just sold the largest software system in the company's history at the time, and the implementation was going to shit, right? And Steve Hess, who was the CIO, was like, "Don't worry about it, Joe. I'll bring in my military guys, and they'll figure it out." And I'm like, "Military guys? I'm military, Mm-hmm. And in walked these two Greencastle consultants, just perfect, specimens of consultants, perfectly built, perfect suits, perfect everything, and walk in, and they start just creating structure from the chaos that existed. And I was like, I got to know these guys. And that was probably late 2008, early 2009. And so not knowing anything about them, I got on the interwebs, and they had a crappy little website. And but I got the address, and so I got in my suit, and I drove up here to Malvern, which was about an hour drive from my house, on a Friday afternoon, and knocked on the door. And you guys don't know, at the old office, it was a little bit more. It was a little tighter quarters, and thank goodness it was a GAC day, so everybody was there. And ran into Selwyn and Hamish, and I think Jake was there as well. And I was like, "I want to interview for a job." And they're like, okay, just they didn't know what to do with me because nobody's ever just walked in, and so they're like, we'll sit here, we'll get to you in a second. And then over the course of the next couple hours, they gave me a practical exercise. I went and had lunch with some of the guys, and they didn't have a job. So it was, I went through the whole process, and they're like, we got to put you on hold. And so for 3 years, we went back and forth. I would be ready to jump from a job, and they didn't have a spot. And so finally, Selwyn called me. Actually, Hamish called me and said, we want to bring you on board as a director of client engagement services, to run the sales and marketing stuff. And so it was perfect timing, but that had taken about 3 years. So 2012, I got hired here.
Okay. Wow. So from there, then what? Like, what was your career path in Greencastle?
Yeah. There were two partners at the time. It was Jake and Selwyn, Jake Kretzing and Selwyn Evans. And Selwyn was the marketing sales person, the big ideas, loved doing the deep dive research into the diffusion of innovation and good to great and all that kind of stuff. And Jake was the business side. He would handle all the accounting and all that kind of stuff. And the ultimate goal was for me to come in and help Selwyn with the sales and marketing stuff. And then there would be three partners. And what happened, unfortunately, was in 2015, Jake passed away. He got esophageal cancer, and within like 6 weeks, he passed away. And so then for a while there, it was just Selwyn as the partner, and he'd taken on Jake's duties. And I guess my path got accelerated a little bit because Selwyn wanted some help. And after about doing it for 20 years, Selwyn wanted to retire, and I was the heir apparent. So we started the process of me buying the company from him.
So why did you think it was a good decision to buy the company at the time?
I saw the potential. I'm part of a business group of CEOs, and it's a group that that you bring the idea, or you're having challenges as a leader of a company, and we talk it out, and they give you their opinion. And I presented the option of buying Greencastle and gave them all the stuff and the price and everything. And they, out of the 18 of them, all 18 of them told me not to do it. But I knew that what Selwyn and everybody else had built had so much potential that when it was time for me to run it, that I could make a few tweaks and just it would be off to the races. And so that's what happened in 2019 October. We did the transfer of ownership. I had an 8-hour class on how to run Greencastle, and then the next day Selwyn was on vacation, and I didn't see him or talk to him for about 3 months.
What a start that was.
Yes, it was. It was definitely trial by fire. But it worked. I mean, it worked. I mean, it wasn't, there was no point in time where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or, I mean, Selwyn was always there to answer my questions. It was just, if I didn't make it my own, it would have always been like, Selwyn, help me out. Mm-hmm. And he would never would have been able to get out of it if he didn't really want to.
Yeah. So since then, what have you identified as the biggest challenge of being a CEO and owning a business?
It always comes down to about 80% of the problems or 20% of the issues, and it's always people. And not saying people are the issues, but everything we talk about, I mean, being part of the SLT, everything we talk about is about people, mostly because that's our product, but also because everything revolves around that. And we obviously are a very short tenured company because we've hired so many people in the last couple of years that we only have maybe half the company that's been here over 2 years. And then just certifications and that kind of stuff. And so that's always the issue is finding the right person for the right seat.
Mm-hmm. And then what's the most rewarding part?
Getting the right person in the right seat. Because I learned this as a SEAL, is it was very rewarding to tell somebody, here's your left and right limits, and here's the goal, and go. And there were many times as a SEAL platoon commander, I'd be like, all right, Petty Officer so-and-so, here's your left and right limits, here's the objective. I don't really want to know how you get there, just go. And then when they accomplish their goal, I would be like, how'd you do it? And they'd be like, yeah, you don't want to know, Mr. Crandall. And so I learned the lesson of hire the right people, give them the opportunity to excel, show them what right looks like. But most importantly, hire people that are smarter than me, because just as Greencastle has evolved, my role has evolved from being kind of a jack of all trades, and now everything as you grow as a company gets specialized. You're taking over the sales and marketing stuff. Adam and Jer are taking over the different kinds of clients we have. Eric is taking over all the financial stuff. But as we continue to grow, it'll go from Eric needing a controller, and now needing an AP person, and you just get more and more specialized as you grow. So that's the biggest realization I think I've come to recently.
So I was going to ask you what advice you would give to somebody who wants to be a CEO or own a business. Would that be part of it, or is there something else?
I would say you have to be very comfortable with ambiguity, not knowing what like a couple Fridays ago, I wouldn't have expected Eric to call me and tell me somebody fell through the roof. You know what I mean? And
you're okay, by the way.
Yeah. But it's also the very same situations I ran into as a SEAL platoon commander, or as a class leader of my BUDS class. Is I'd come in on Monday morning, and the instructors would be like, "Well, why was Petty Officer so and so on top of the barracks?" I don't know, but you know what? I'm going to go get wet until we figure it out. So it is very much I adopt very much a servant leadership kind of approach, where it's not necessarily about me or my success, because that will come from everybody else being successful, and that's kind of how we treat it with our clients too. It's not about Greencastle's success; it's about Exelon's or PPL's or American Water or whoever's success, and that will lead to our success. But we definitely we want to make it about them and not us.
Yeah, and that's one of our values, is that servant leadership. So we have that instilled in everybody that works here. It's important. So before we wrap up, I want to get to 2 fun facts you told me.
Okay.
I'm looking to hear a little bit more about these. So
all right, hold on.
That has to be something else. He's chugging from a bottle of Woodford. If you're listening, you'll have to look at the video. It's either
Saturday night in the teams. All right, what's your question?
So you grew up riding horses on the
that one here.
On the Ponderosa Ranch from Bonanza.
Correct. Yep.
Tell us about that.
So I grew up in Incline Village, Nevada, and very small town of permanent residents. I think like 2,500 permanent residents. But where I grew up across the freeway was the actual ranch where they filmed part of the show. And they had stables there, and I befriended a kid whose family ran the stables, and for about a year and a half, we would just go ride horses, and it was just a great time. I mean, it was we were think of the equivalent of kids on motorbikes, except these things would kick you and do their own thing. But it was a lot of fun. You learned how to deal with big animals, and it was just very interesting to be able to ride around the mountains of Tahoe on horses.
So what was your horse's name?
I didn't use the same one every time.
No. Okay.
No. An interesting story to that, though, is after they left, another family came in and started running it, and our cats had become accustomed to riding the horses themselves. So we had a cat named Killer.
Your cats? Okay.
Yeah. We had a cat named Killer that would go and just sit on the horses' backs as they walked around, and so the new owner didn't appreciate it, so he would shoot the cats. So. But we had 12, so one.
It's a drop in the bucket, right? Okay, wow, I was not expecting that.
Like I said, like an onion. My siblings are probably like, yeah, I remember Killer, Spotty, Charlie.
Rest in peace, Sam.
Yeah, they're all dead now.
And then the other fun fact, you said you used to go swimming in Lake Tahoe all year round.
Yeah. So my buddy and I, we would have there was piers that would go out into the water, and in the wintertime they would be covered in ice, and we'd have competitions to see who could get to the end of the pier and back without falling in, and we always fell in. And then we would sometimes go swim in, take canoes out, but you didn't know what hypothermia was when you're 8, 10, 15 years old. But I think that was probably one of the things that helped me get through SEAL training, because as much as they tried, they couldn't. I never got hypothermic in SEAL training. And I mean, they had this place called the Steel Pier, which is a metal pier, and they would one night, I remember it was a cold night, and they would put ice down, and then they put, these big military fans, you're familiar with them. They put like 4 of them, and they put me on the ice, and I was doing the fish where you flopped around like this on the ice, but still I never got hypothermic. But I think it was because as a very young age I was always swimming in the lake, and the lake in the summertime only got to in the 60s, so it was pretty cold in the winter. It was in the 40s,
wow.
I think.
And that's probably where your love of swimming started, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But the opposite side of that too is if they ever wanted me to quit buds, all they would have had to do is put me in heat greater than 85 degrees, and I would have been out.
So not a fan of heat. You're not moving to like the
No.
South anytime
Nope.
soon. Okay. All right. Let's leave the audience with one leadership lesson.
I would say the biggest leadership lesson that I've learned throughout my career is don't confuse effort with performance. So I don't necessarily, if I give somebody a task or somebody gives me a task, it's not about the activity that gets to the end result. It's about the end result. And so, and that's how it is with our clients. They don't care about how the sausage is made. They just want the sausage. And so, in buds, it was very apparent that a lot of folks were very focused on the effort, but not on getting to the actual result. And the same sort of thing happens in the civilian community a lot. Is people are very focused on the activity. Look how busy I am, but they never produce anything worthwhile, and that's a problem.
That's a great lesson. I like that. Cool. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thanks for interviewing me.
Yeah, and please like and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. It helps the business, helps the podcast. We love seeing all the comments and activity, so please keep it up. And Joe, we'll have to have you back, and maybe next time you can bring another bottle of wood for reserve, and maybe we'll do 2 next time. Who knows?
Maybe.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Appreciate it.